England has one of the richest and most interesting histories of any nation in the world. From the Norman conquest to the British Empire, there's plenty of stuff to get your teeth stuck into. This is reflected in the fact that England has appeared in every civilization installment today. Currently, England is led by the legendary Queen Victoria, but who else could lead the English people in Civilization 6? Today we're going to look at a few to decide on England's alternate leader. If you don't know the basic concept of the series, go and check out episode 1 where we pitched George Washington against Abraham Lincoln for America's alternate leader. At the start of that video I go through all the basics you need to know to understand the series. One key note is that I won't give every detail on a leader, I just try and give a solid overview and highlight a couple of key events or facts. Please do like and subscribe for more if you're going to enjoy this video, and be sure to share it with a friend as well. Also, I love to read your comments, so let me know your thoughts on anything to do with this video, whether it's the concept, leaders, or just the history of England itself. Before we go any further, let's take a look at some feedback from the last video. In the comments section, Nathan came up with some interesting suggestions. Firstly, a possible unique ability for George Washington could be less unit maintenance due to the fact he was historically underfunded, or a possible unit bonus when being attacked. I love these suggestions as they really reflect the difficulties and perseverance of George Washington and his military career. Nathan also suggested that Eisenhower deserved at least a mention within the video. For some reason Eisenhower just didn't come into my thinking, so thank you for highlighting him. He definitely deserved to make at least the honourable mentions. Thanks for all the suggestions, and make sure you get involved and comment your ideas below. I will keep mentioning them at the start of each episode. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen and one of the leaders from history that I admire most. She led her isolated Protestant England against a dangerous largely Catholic Europe. She was born on the 7th of September 1533 and became Queen on the 17th of November 1558. Previously, Elizabeth has appeared in the first Civilization game, Civilization 2, Civilization 3, Civilization 4, Civilization 5, Civilization Revolution and Civilization Revolution 2. Why didn't I just say every Civilization title but this one? She was in so many ways a woman in a man's world. 16th century England was a time where a queen was seen as inferior to a king, and Elizabeth, as a Protestant as well, was by no means secure in her position. But Elizabeth had a calculated approach. She learnt from the mistakes of her siblings, and with the help of her most trusted advisors, most notably William Cecil, she ran England through a turbulent period. As with so many leaders we have looked at through series such as this and the historical look videos I did for Rise and Fall, Elizabeth was undoubtedly shaped by her experience in her younger years. Her father Henry VIII wrote her out of the succession for a period of time, and her older sister Mary, better known as Bloody Mary, almost had her executed for a supposed role in Wyatt's rebellion. As a result, Elizabeth was sent to the Tower. This is a place her mother Anne Boleyn went before Henry had her executed. She must have been terrified, and these experiences almost certainly led to her being a cautious and calculated queen. This cautious attitude largely worked though. She managed to keep control of issues such as foreign policy, especially in the Netherlands, religious differences in England and the country's finances, by managing them in this way. Famously, on the subject of religious conformity, Elizabeth said she did not want to make windows into men's souls. Although as her reign progressed, internal and external Catholic plots forced the Queen to take a harsher line towards English Catholics, this quote demonstrates how the Queen did not want to force religious conversion on those who were not Protestant, similar to what her sister Mary had done, and look how history remembers her. So Elizabeth's real triumph came against the mighty Spanish Armada in 1588, and this brings us to a new point in the video where I'm going to ask you a question. It could be on Nintendo like it is for our Nintendo videos, but for this it's obviously going to be on history. So, how many armadas did the Spanish send against Elizabeth? Was it just the one in 1588? Did they send 2, or did they send 3? Yes, it was 3. Interestingly, the English sent 1 to Spain as well, but it failed, so we tend to brush that under the carpet. The Spanish Armada is unquestionably the peak of Elizabeth's reign and what she's remembered for. Moreover, it came against Philip of Spain, who is also in the game. It was at this point that it became evident that her country stood behind her. There was no uprising of English Catholics to support the proposed Spanish invasion, but instead the English proved their love for their queen and country above all else and stood behind their monarch. Elizabeth also made a stirring speech at Tilbury which shows what a lioness and fighter she was, but unbeknownst to her, this actually occurred a couple of days after the Armada was defeated. Still a pretty cool speech though. In all honesty, it was the defeat of the Armada at sea that won the day for Elizabeth. For this she had her great admirals such as Sir Francis Drake, as well as the weather to thank. All in all, Elizabeth is remembered as one of England's finest and strongest monarchs. It's quite telling when the period before, the reign of Edward and Mary, and the period after, the Stuarts, were incredibly turbulent, just how well she managed her nation. She certainly earned the title Elizabeth Gloriana. She could bring bonuses to the game surrounding naval combat, religion, or even espionage. Sir Francis Walsingham, also known as Elizabeth's Spymaster, is famous for foiling a number of plots targeting the Queen's life. Winston Churchill was born in Woodstock, Oxfordshire on the 30th of November 1874. Surprisingly to some, Churchill was born to an English father, the British statesman Lord Randolph Henry Spencer Churchill, but an American mother, Jenny Spencer Churchill, also known as Lady Randolph. I'd say what class he was born into, but your average Joe didn't have a father with Lord as his title. Churchill has previously appeared in Civilization 4 and Civilization Revolution 2. I find it strange that he hasn't appeared in more Civilization games, but that might become apparent later. There's lots of exciting events in Churchill's life that I don't cover in this video, so if you want to learn about things like his career before the First World War, then check out the links in the description. Unless you actually have zero interest in history and have never heard about the Second World War, then you will be at least slightly familiar with Winston Churchill. He's probably the most recognisable British Prime Minister of all time, and one of the most popular. Well, at least in Britain. However, he was not always on the path to being remembered so fondly almost 100 years later. In fact, Churchill faced a number of setbacks during his career. Most notably, as the First Lord of the Admiralty, Churchill sent 200,000 soldiers to their deaths with the strategic disaster which was the Gallipoli campaign. However, Churchill did make some advancements during the First World War. He was vital for the development of British tanks and also the improvement of the British Air Force, which would eventually become the RAF on April 1st, 1918. It is, however, his actions in the Second World War which he's best remembered for. Churchill became Prime Minister on the 10th of May 1940, succeeding Neville Chamberlain, whose policy of appeasement towards Hitler had frankly proven to be an absolute disaster. This was a time when the Nazi invasion of Western Europe was just about to get into full swing, and Britain was becoming more and more isolated against Hitler's impressive military. In so many ways, one of Churchill's key battles was keeping Britain in the war, following the swift collapse of France, and with the presence of pro-appeasement figures such as Lord Halifax keen on peace with Hitler. Any such peace would almost certainly have made our world today a darker place. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and the streets, we shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender. These 42 words are part of Churchill's famous "We shall fight on the beaches" speech. With these words, Churchill brought hope, determination, and most importantly unity to a nation that was seemingly facing the impossible. Throughout the war, Churchill's speeches were vital in maintaining British morale and motivating the population who were seeing their homes destroyed, family members killed, and lives completely ruined. Britain's continuation in the war was vital for preventing Hitler from focusing all his resources on Soviet Russia, something which could easily have led to its fall, and for playing a major part along with the Empire and her allies. It's so important to remember how many people from all across the world fought for the lives we have today in the eventual liberation of Europe in 1945. However, there is one major drawback to Churchill that whilst researching for this video I learnt a lot about. The Bengal Famine of 1943 saw up to 3 million deaths alone in Bengal, and it is certain Churchill could have done an awful lot more to have prevented it or at least provided aid. There is no doubt there is an imperial side to Churchill that is constantly swept under the carpet by so many people. I don't want to touch on this anymore in this video, but it could certainly be a major hurdle in his way to being a part of Civilization 6, and things like this should 100% be further discussed across the world. I know so many of the leaders we look at in these videos will have things I may not even discuss that do not fit with their popular image or fit with today's moral codes, but the Bengal Famine was less than 100 years ago and is still strong in the memory of many. There is no doubt for the British, Churchill will remain a hero because of his incredible leadership shown in Britain's darkest hour, but in a number of places across the world he is less fondly remembered. Churchill lost the 1945 general election to Clement Attlee of the Labour Party, but reprised the job in 1951, serving as Prime Minister until 1955. He died on the 24th of January 1965, aged 90. At his funeral, thousands lined the streets of London to remember and give their thanks to one of Britain's finest wartime leaders, and the man who many believed played a major part in saving the free world. Churchill's bonuses would have to revolve around the war effort. Maybe something along the lines of bonus production towards military units when the target of a declaration of war, and something which affects the war weariness or loyalty mechanics in the game. Before we draw this video to a conclusion, let's take a look at some honourable mentions. There's certainly more English leaders who could have made this video, so be sure to give your thoughts in the comments below. For me, England's alternate leader would have to be Elizabeth. I know that might not be the most exciting choice, but she brought stability to England over a 45-year period and embodied the fighting spirit which makes England so great. In the end, I feel like Churchill was too controversial a figure across the world to see him join Civilization 6. That's not to say I don't think he would make an interesting addition. What do you think though? Do you love or hate Churchill? Would you have chosen Elizabeth, or maybe someone else who didn't even make the video? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. I know this has been a longer video than I'd like, but thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode, and for lots more gaming and history related content. And I will see you in another video.